episode of The Marital Mission. I am your host, Shamika McDowell.
And I am your other host, Lito McDowell.
Oh, and we are The Marital Mission.
We are.
We are back on the mic yet again.
Spitting hot fire.
So what are we talking about this week?
Teamwork.
Makes the dream work.
Steph and Durant.
Or Steph and Aisha.
Jordan and Pippen. Grant and Tamia.
Yeah. About to say Jordan and Juanita, but...
Nah.
Sorry.
We've kind of hinted at some couples being in opposition or in competition with each other in some previous episodes. I just think it's a good topic to touch on how it's important. Like, what does it mean to be a team, and how does that look? Mm-hmm. How does it benefit? So how does teamwork make the dream work?
Well, I guess we can start with what is a team. There's no I in team. We hear all the cliches.
Yeah, one band, one sound. That was a big one.
Wow, you threw it all the way back to Drumline.
Yes, indeed. So, not really going by Webster, but when you think about a team, you think about multiple people with one common goal. Mm-hmm. They may have different assets that they bring to the table. Mm-hmm. They may have different abilities, but there is a shared goal that all the efforts are working toward accomplishing.
I wish I had that article. It's funny that you bring this up because at work, we're implementing new tools to help us be more productive and collaborate more on the projects that we have going on.
Yeah.
And literally one of the articles I was reading was talking about the differences between Microsoft Groups versus Microsoft Teams.
Okay.
And I needed to know the difference because of how it's set up within our company and how to best use that. And so he was literally defining the difference between the actual textbook definition of teams versus groups.
Yeah.
And I think I recall group being just a group, literally a
collection
of people or things that come together. They could be congruent with one another. They could be opposed to one another, but it's just a collection of things. Whereas a team, there is a common goal.
Yeah. That
the people have come together to accomplish. They all have different tasks, but they all have an objective in mind.
I feel that. I mean, immediately I thought of, you think about work groups, like email, right? Mm-hmm. You're connected to all these people. Mm-hmm. Many of them you'll never reach out to. Mm-hmm. You don't know who they are. Mm-hmm. You have no interest in finding out who they are, but you are part of a work group. Mm-hmm. Then you have your team. Mm-hmm. You guys communicate often.
Yes.
You guys are working toward a similar goal. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think most people can understand that.
Yeah. And so how do we parlay that into our relationships and ultimately our marriages? Okay,
so we all have heard, or I assume we all have heard, that when a man and a woman come together in marriage, that they should become one flesh, right? Of course, that stems from Eve was made from Adam, so they were technically one flesh. Mm-hmm. And so the goal is, when a husband and wife join together, it's the same concept of we are one. Mm-hmm. Right? It's deeper than just two separate people coming together. We are coming together to form one idea, one union, where we are pretty much like dying to our individual goals and mission, and we're forming something together.
Yeah.
And I guess the manifestation of that is when two people come together and have a child. That's an outward manifestation, but you know, there definitely should be a physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, financial, you know, and everything else. There should be a coming together and forming one before a child is conceived, if a child is conceived.
Okay.
So there are levels, right?
Definitely, because I'm going through the mental Rolodex of how all of that looks.
Okay.
And I know that we, as humans, we have battles with that, like
indeed
what we should give up and we talked about it in a previous episode about individuality and how we maintain that.
Yeah.
But when we are to operate as a team, what does that look like on a spiritual and physical level?
Okay, so you have to understand that in marriage, your goal is to make sure that you are meeting the needs of your spouse. When we say this often, well, there are going to be times when you can choose to operate how you have been operating for a pretty long time in your life, which is to satisfy the wants and needs of yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
And good luck to you if that's the mode you operate in.
But it's pretty normal because that's what we grow accustomed to.
Yeah.
Right? I want to eat Whataburger, so that's where I'm going to go today. As a single person, right?
Shout out to those who have the ability to go to Whataburger.
Yeah.
Got to throw that in there.
Leave that right there. Whatever your Whataburger is,
really,
you go and, you know what I'm saying, enjoy yourself.
If In-N-Out is your thing, that's not our testimony.
Shake Shack. And all the others.
Yeah.
So
Crystals.
You wake up and you say, hey, I want to go to the museum today. Or I just want to lounge around the house all day. Or I want to go visit my best friend. Whatever it is, as a single person, you kind of decide this is how I want my day to go. And then you pretty much do everything that you please to either make that happen, or you can decide, hey, I just don't want to do anything. Well, when you become married, you still have those desires, you still have those thoughts. But what takes precedent over that is, what does my spouse want? What does my spouse need? So you wake up, man, I sure have a taste for Whataburger today. Well, let me find out if my spouse has a taste for anything, right? And if they don't have a taste for anything, then maybe I'll offer Whataburger as a suggestion, right? Or maybe, hey, I have a taste for Whataburger, right? What do you think? Or maybe I can go get some Whataburger for lunch, and then we could do something else for dinner.
So considering somebody other than yourself.
You have to consider your spouse before you start to make those plans and goals for yourself.
Yeah.
So let's go through all of them, right? So what does that look like physically? Teamwork. As a married man, I realized that everything that I ate from the time that we had met, really before, but I couldn't really go back and undo anything that I had done.
Yeah.
But I knew that the things that I ate and drank not only affected me anymore, but it affected you. If I am unhealthy, then that affects you on a larger level. Because, hey, you may have to be my caretaker if I don't take care of myself, right? You may have to make the decision to whatever, right? Whatever comes with me not being healthy.
And then kids and
then kids and all that. So when you asked that first year, the first few months of marriage, you want to go vegan?
Probably shouldn't started out the gate with vegan, but I figured, hey,
right?
if we're going to do it, let's go.
And so my immediate response was one of a single person. I was like, no, which, hey, you asked me that I want to, right? You didn't ask me if I thought we should. Mm-hmm. The immediate, like I'm telling you how I perceived it was like, no. Then I began to think about it and I was like, well, this woman cares for me. She's shown that. So let me consider this.
Yeah.
And I remember you took me to the first restaurant where I ordered a vegan meal.
Where was that? I don't remember that.
This is like everything green. It was green something across the street from West Alabama.
Green seed? No, I remember. Field of Greens.
Field of Greens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, I enjoyed the meal. Mm-hmm. And it shocked me. Something that you put out or something we put out on our social media was remain teachable. Mm-hmm. Right? And so in marriage, you have to remain teachable.
Yeah. Not thinking you know it all and that there's nothing else that somebody can come along and teach you.
Exactly. And
or this is how I am and just take me as I am.
Right. That's dangerous right there.
Yeah.
Just learned that lesson today. There are some movies that I had purposely not watched.
And I can I just say, I was like, I cannot believe he's sitting here watching these movies. And one particular one, you were into it more than I was. And I was like, look at him over there, invested in this film that he would never watch otherwise.
Look, I'm talking about, I had homeboys in college, like telling me like, you should watch this movie. And I don't know, I guess I was just one of those pride guys, or I just stick to things. I stick to my guns. If I say 1994, if I say I don't like a specific thing, then in 2009, I'm probably going to say the same thing. And in 2018, I'm just going to hold on to it. Right. That's just kind of how I am. And so I'm learning that that's not always healthy for our marriage.
Yeah.
And, sitting there and watching those movies, or even the ones that I didn't just sit there, I was on my phone or whatever. Even in those moments, it hit me. I was like, I have to remain teachable. I have to remain open to allowing new experiences with you.
Yeah.
Because everything that I did prior to you, it helped me to become the person I am today, or the person that I was when we married. Mm-hmm. But then we started a new chapter, right? Even a new book. We're writing a new story. And so I think we can get lost in, this is who I am. And you hold on so tightly to who you were, you don't allow yourself to become who you are going to be, or who you should be.
Yeah. And not just for the sake of the marriage. I think I don't ever want married people to feel or get to the point where they feel like, well, I'm giving all this to the marriage for this other person. What do I have for me? You have to realize that when you're giving up something, you're not without. You're gaining something for yourself too. So something that you may not have ever done prior to your spouse. Yeah, you may do it for them, but it's also for you. You may come to learn something about yourself that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. And you may enjoy that thing, whatever it is. And you can start to feed that, and it can change the course of your life. So I don't ever want us to get into the mindset that, oh, I have to give up myself or give so much of myself to this other person. I don't ever want people to view it that way. Think of it as a learning opportunity to benefit you. You learn things on the job all the time. You take training courses and go to conferences in the corporate world, if that's your thing. I think in marriage, it kind of operates the same way. You go to you do different things with your spouse, and it ultimately enriches you.
Yeah, you definitely should never feel that way, but essentially that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's all for your betterment. It should be. Now, if you're with someone and you're having to make choices that are detrimental to your growth,
yeah,
and your health,
Like cutting off your family and...
Yeah. Unless they need to be cut off.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so that's what I'm saying. It should be for your betterment and the betterment of the marriage. So, you know, given those things, eating, working out, getting the proper sleep. Now, that's one thing that, be transparent, I definitely need to do more of. Life is much better when we go to bed at the same time. Even if, you know, one person falls asleep before the other. Just
talking about me.
Spending that time together, you know, sharing that intimacy of being there. These are all things that you decide to do because, you know, I'm a night owl.
That you are, and I am not.
And you're not. So there are times when, you know, you rough it out. You'll stay in the living area, you know, with me. You'll just fall asleep on the couch.
For as long as my eyes can take it.
And sometimes I'll try to, you know, carry you to bed. You'd be like, nah, I'm going to stay on the couch. And I understand, like, you're going to just stay here. So it's just one of those things where, you know, you want to make sure you're taking the other person into consideration. I took on an interest in craft beer.
Yeah.
I think it started to grow as we got married. I had to realize that, one, I can't abuse this substance because then it's not doing good for me or the marriage.
Or the ministry.
Right? But it was one of those things where I had to break some of my feelings on women drinking beer. You would go and you would buy beer for me. You know, we FaceTime each other, for lack of a better word, right? We are Android users, but we would video call and you would be like in the store showing me the selection. And I would say, get this one, get that one. And then, you know, you began to become more interested and I guess trying, right? And so you start off with your ciders and this and that, and then it started to grow. And I had personal feelings on seeing women drink beer because I just wasn't used to it. And then I had to check myself like, dude, what kind of hypocrite are you to be sitting up here drinking and then you don't think it's okay for her? Over time, it's become something that we have.
But that's interesting because you would have me try things. Yeah.
I mean, that it is true. It's just, I can't even explain it. It is weird. I'm a weird person. But it's grown to something that we are able to share with together. And, you know, even in that, though, there are things that you like that I don't particularly care for. And there are some things that I like that you don't care for. But my point is, you make an effort in considering the other person.
Yeah.
Also physically, we can talk about sexually. So my goal as a husband is to make sure that I'm pleasing you.
Yeah.
Your goal is to make sure you're pleasing me.
Right.
So you go into it with different intentions. And I mean, some people may have those intentions, you know, prior, but that's what it should be in a marriage relationship. When that is being done, both parties' needs are being met.
Right.
Now we start to talk about emotionally, right? And when we talk about emotionally, you have to make sure that you are making space for your partner to feel comfortable to share how they're feeling with you. You don't want to get into a place where your partner doesn't feel protected in sharing their deepest feelings and emotions.
Right.
Because then it's going to be a lie, or they're going to feel the need to, you know, cover up. And that's going to...
Or turn to other people.
And that's going to like definitely ruin any level of intimacy.
Right.
So
the worst feeling is somebody else knowing what you should know.
Exactly. Now, when we talk about that, we have to realize that it's a lot of people having problems with being more emotionally attached to a family member, whether it's a parent, a sibling, because, you know, if you, especially like for twins or, you know, those siblings that they've grown up and they share all secrets together, and, or, you know, a cousin, a friend, or whatever, right? But specifically with family, it's a lot of people, they have trouble when they become married to then
leave and cleave. And it's so important to do that. Yeah.
Especially for when we talk about men cleaving to their wives, right? Mm-hmm. One, cleave just means to like really get close with.
Yeah.
To the point where, you know, you are in tune. There becomes a point when words don't have to be spoken, when you can sense things, right?
Yeah.
But it also is like longing to be closer. Mm-hmm. So there's always an effort to grow closer with your spouse, right? To the point where it doesn't become like mundane, or it's not like, oh, the honeymoon's over. He doesn't put forth the same effort. You know, he doesn't, you know, do this or he doesn't do that. You're constantly trying to grow in intimacy and companionship with your spouse because people change, right? So if I rely on, hey, back in 2012, when we first got married, I remember you used to like to do this with me. So that's what we're going to do in 2018. You might not like it anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. Or I may not like to do something that I used to like to do and you still enjoy it. It's kind of for me to just be like, well, I don't like doing that no more. I'm not going to, you know. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure that we are only giving that space for our spouses, and we eliminate that deep level of emotional attachment to anybody else.
Well, let's get into that for a moment, because that is, I know that's a hard thing for a lot of people, because you've had these family members, particularly, let's just stick with family. It can apply to friends.
Yeah.
But with family, it seems to be harder to not listen to them. We have personal experience with this. We've heard other people having issues with this, where a family member may feel a certain way about your marriage, and it not necessarily a dynamic between you two, but maybe you're facing an issue. Maybe a child is coming into the world. Maybe you're making a major decision about where to live or anything like that. And here comes the family member giving their 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
And one of the partners is conflicted on, do I consider the advice of this person who has been in my life this whole time and they've always had my back? And so do I give them, you know, space in my marriage to kind of help us grow?
Yeah.
Where that one person is seeing it as help, the other spouse may be like, why are you giving them access to a space in our marriage?
That's good.
That they have no business being, and this is between us.
That's good. And there has to be a conversation between the spouses. Mm-hmm. Are we going to open this part of our lives up to anybody else? And I think it's unfair for a spouse to, well, I guess it's personal. Yeah. But I do think it's unfair if a spouse doesn't want their partner to have any type of conversation or influence from people who have been in their lives their whole life, right? Right. The thing comes when what your family says takes precedent over what your spouse thinks and believes and says. So by all means, if you have a good relationship with your family and they want to give you advice and they're looking out for your best interests, or at least they feel like they're looking out for your best interests, I mean, I'm a big family person, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think what happens is when you go back and to your partner, your husband or your wife, and whatever advice you were given is then perceived to be taken more seriously than what they have to say.
Or just not even that, just always considering what the family, sometimes you just need to not listen to family. It's just
That's true.
Point blank and period.
And sometimes you do.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
But a lot of, I think, where families kind of, or marriages kind of have trouble with is how much input is too much.
Yeah.
And because there are some families that go overboard with it. And maybe that one person who is receiving the advice feels helpless in pushing back.
Are you talking about the person whose family it is or the others? Then that's okay. So I got you. I don't think there's a such thing as a family giving too much advice. There could be a such thing as you listening too much to their advice. Because once you've grown, you could be like, hey, I appreciate it, but no thank you. It's that simple. And if they don't respect it, then that's a different type of problem that you have.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I realize that different people have different relationships with their family, but hopefully you can grow to a place where you set some boundaries. You don't only need to have boundaries inside your marriage. You need to have boundaries in every relationship that you have.
Right.
So those are boundaries that need to be set. Hey, I appreciate it, but we're good on this one. You know. Yeah,
and it's important to respond in that manner. Don't say I appreciate or using the I, because they always feel like, you know, it's just you that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Say we appreciate your input.
That's good.
To help remind them.
Yeah.
You're not just talking to me right now. Yeah. You're talking to us.
No, that's good. That's good. I agree with that. You know, families, you can't control what they're going to say or how they're going to feel to a certain extent. But you can limit the amount of advice you allow them to give you or what you receive.
Right.
And you get to the place where I can take this advice or these opinions back to my spouse, or maybe it's not even, if I don't feel like it's going to better the situation any, or it's not going to help us to reach our goal, I might not even want to share that.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Everything that you and your family go through or discuss, it shouldn't always be reported back.
Yeah.
You know,
for the sake of family relationships.
Exactly.
Some things just don't need to be reported back. And it's funny. Again, I was on one of my Facebook groups, and one of the questions to the group was, hey, I have this, my spouse, my husband is feuding with his best friend over something, and my husband won't tell me what it is. All that I know is I think that he put my husband in a compromising situation, and my husband didn't appreciate it, but my husband won't tell me because he doesn't want me to be mad at the best friend because he knows that I already don't like him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he won't tell me what it is. Should I be angry at him? And the consensus was, well, it's a great thing that your husband is protecting both you and the best friend for the sake of any type of relationship that you may have in the future.
Yeah.
And he seems like he's handling it, and he'll tell you when he's ready to tell you. But right now he's handling his business.
Yeah, I get you on that. And every couple has to make the choices for their marriage. You know, in a situation like that, I can see that. I mean, now letting you know, hey, there's a problem. I'm handling it. You know, that's one thing as opposed to just like not saying anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Because you have to know your spouse, and you have to know what's going to work best for you guys, and not completely keep you in the dark, but just trust me to be able to take care of this thing. Because you got to realize, man, we out here, we doing the best we can, right, in these marriages. And there's a lot of attacks on our marriage that we don't need to expose everything to our spouse. You know what I'm saying? Like,
just for peace sake.
For peace sake.
Yeah.
I don't need to know about the dude that worked at the Starbucks that flirt with you every time you go in there. Unless you feel like, you know, it's getting to a point where it's disrespectful. Yeah. And, you know, you need me to do something. But other than that, you handle things on your end, I handle things on my end. We come together. That's the one goal we're talking about, right? Yeah. Our one goal is to make sure that we are here for each other. We're not letting anybody else compromise that. And we have different, sometimes we're going to have different roles. Just because you come together as one doesn't mean that you're going to be moving in unison. Yeah. In the actions, right? But all movement should be leading toward the same goal or path, right?
Right.
So let's talk about financially.
Okay.
All right. So financially being one. So I think we talked or touched a little bit on last episode about, some kind of the direction we're going in financially.
Mm-hmm.
Each marriage has to do what's best for them. But one thing that I realize now is with finances, with everything within a marriage is ours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there can be delegations, there can be allocations that are split between the husband and wife, but everything is ours, at least just from like a macro level, right?
Yeah.
And then what you do on the micro level, with what you're going to do with this over here and what I'm going to do with this over there, that's different.
Yeah.
But on the umbrella, it's all ours.
Okay.
So
not a lot of people feel like that though.
But it's true though, right? Because if I work and I make a certain amount of money, or if I make any money, right? And you work and you make money, what I do with the money that I have, it affects you.
Yes.
It affects the marriage. It affects what we're able to do, what we're able to invest in, the bills we're able to pay. We can all just agree that, whether you're filing separately or jointly,
whether you have your own bank account, separate bank accounts
or not, what you do with money that you make in a marriage, it affects the other person on some level.
Yes.
Now, getting into how you manage that money, that's different. And you can choose to manage that money however you want. But there should be a goal, a common goal, even if you have your separate bank accounts or checking accounts. And even if I'm going to pay back my student loan and you're going to pay back your student loan, or you're going to pay off your car and I'm going to pay off my credit cards, we still should have some type of common goal, whether it's, hey, we're going to decide, hey, this is where we're going to live, right? So a portion of the income is going to go here, whether it's the money that I make, the money you make, or we all just put it into this one big pot. If you have those individual accounts or, things or money that you want to do with what you want to do with, then that should be agreed upon.
Agreed.
And if you want to pull everything together, then that should be agreed upon. Because if one person is gung ho about joining accounts and monies, and the other person is skeptical or they're kind of reluctant, then there leaves place for, I'm going to just stash a little bit over here. I'm make a little bit of money on the side. I'm not going to tell this person about that.
So a lot of women subscribe to that idea that you should have a rainy day fund. And they hear from women in their families that don't tell him about this money. Just stash you something away in case something ever happens.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Don't do it. Yeah, don't do it. There doesn't need to be any financial secrets, because even if he doesn't have a problem with it at one point in the marriage, he could change. And you don't want to jeopardize the fact that if he is to find out about it at one point in time, how is he going to react? Like, you don't want to jeopardize the sanctity and the intimacy and the trust in your marriage by a secret that you're holding. There's a lot of dudes out here that
they do the same thing.
They do the same thing. Be honest, be upfront, be willing to compromise, because one thing you have to realize is that in marriage, you won't always come to an agreement. Sometimes you're just not going to agree. A lot of times you're not going to agree. But you have to come to a place to where even if we don't agree, we can move forward for the sake of the marriage.
Yeah.
And even if you don't agree, is not the word I'm looking for. Not if you don't agree, you may not feel the same way that your spouse does. Mm-hmm. But eventually you do have to come to an agreement, because no matter how I feel, things need to move forward, right? Mm-hmm. This is how I feel about it. You know how I feel about it. I know how you feel about it. But let's agree to this one thing.
Yeah.
And then you can move. At least, some growth is better than no growth.
Yeah.
Or moving backwards. Mm-hmm. So those are just kind of, I guess, ways where you two can become one. Mm-hmm. If you start to consider two working together as one is better than one.
And then you didn't touch on the mental part of it too.
Man. Okay.
Because you have to be on the same page mentally.
You do. And I didn't talk about spiritually either, so I'm glad you talked about that. So mentally, that's a hard one. And the reason I say that is because people have a hard time controlling their thoughts. And we know that our thoughts control our actions. Mm-hmm. But when you start to think on the same page as your spouse, you'll start to see great things happening in your marriage.
Yeah.
And it takes an open mind, because you are who you are. I am who I am. But we need to get to a place where, one, I respect your mind and I respect the way that you think. You should be able to respect the way that I think. And then when we come together, we use all of those resources, all of that knowledge and experience that we have individually, and we come together to form a collective way of thinking.
Yes.
And when you do that, you represent each other when you are speaking, no matter whether it's on social media, because we talked about that, right? Mm-hmm. So if I think one way about how we represent ourselves on social media, then people should be able to see that through my social media presence. Mm-hmm. If you feel a certain way, which should be the same way that I think, they should be able to see that through your social media presence. Mm-hmm. But if I'm thinking, hey, I can be out here, posting anything, saying anything, conducting myself in any way, and you're different, or you think differently about it, and then so people will see that. Yeah. It's something there. And just vice versa, like dealing with family. Mm-hmm. If, we're on the same page, or we think, okay, well, these are the boundaries we're going to set. And we think that it's important for us to set these boundaries so that we protect ourselves, mm-hmm. and we protect the feelings of our family members. Mm-hmm. No matter if you're with me, mm-hmm. and we're with my family, or you're by yourself with my family, and vice versa, we conduct ourselves in a way where they see that we are unified. Yeah. So how do you feel about being as one mentally?
It definitely needs to happen, and hopefully it happens before the kiddos come along, because that'll add another level where you definitely need to be on the same page, because from what I hear, these kids will try you. Man. And you two need to be on the same page so they can't cause division in your marriage. But yeah, definitely be on the same page as your spouse. You need to, hopefully you've had these discussions before you get married, so that you come into the marriage on the same wavelength. Of course, as you grow in marriage, there will be some times where you feel that you may not be on the same page, but that's when you need to sit down and have those conversations. Exactly. And like you said, always be on one accord when it comes to outside influences. Yep. Whoever sees you should see that you two are unified. You could be apart and people be like, oh yeah, that's such and such's spouse. Yeah. Because they act just alike, or they think just alike. He would say something like that. Yep. Going back to considering your spouse, you have to know what they would like. Mm. So if you have the same mindset, you already know what they would like. Well, let me consider him because I know he would appreciate it if I did this for him. There you go. So if you're on the same page, if you start to have those conversations, it will help you to develop the same ideals together, the same goals, so that you can, as you said, move forward in the marriage. You can set that path and that legacy that you would like to leave for your family.
Yeah. And now more and more, I see that we think alike. There'll be times when I'll do something. I'll come and tell you, like, I was just thinking it.
Like, literally, it's scary how much, like, I'll think a thing and I'll come home, hey, babe, this. And you're like, I was going to come to you and talk to you about that.
Yeah. And it's just because we make ourselves available and we share what we're thinking. Mm-hmm. So over time, it should become naturally where
it gets easier.
Yeah, it does.
It gets easier as
if you put that work in.
Yeah, it should get easier as the years pass. And I think we're really blessed in that area, that because we have tried to put in the work, that it just happens for us that way.
And, going through trials and error, there are times.
It's a learning experience.
It is.
It's definitely a journey. No, there is no manual. I don't care what books are out there. There is no, sure shot or one way to handle marriage. Just gonna have to feel your way through. But that's also the beauty of it. As challenging as it is, it's a rewarding and humbling experience to be married and to find those commonalities.
Yep.
And even the differences, you can still find beauty in that and, do your thing.
Yep. Okay, so now talking about two is better as one. You can talk about this on multiple levels, right? You think about Transformers.
Bumblebee.
You think about
Optimus Prime.
Yeah, you think about tag team wrestlers, right? Like there's just so many different scenarios where you could just realize that two people working together to accomplish one goal is better than one person. Mm-hmm. And so one thing is that the job gets done more efficiently.
Yes.
Because there's one person that could, catch an error. That if it's just one person working, you may overlook some things. No matter how many times you read a paper that you've written, you're reading it like you thought you wrote it.
Oh, yeah.
And, even in my profession, you think about the younger grades, most of the time, the students only have one teacher, and that one teacher teaches everything. But as the child gets older, then you need more teachers, right? This person teaches math. This person may teach, science. So, and, thank God that I've been blessed to work with some great teams. Mm-hmm. And that helps when you are doing something. Like, just think about, like, I have a certain personality type. Mm-hmm. So I may reach certain kids that my teammate may not reach on that level.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So you have to realize that when you come together with your spouse and you guys are working to accomplish something, whether it's raising a child or getting out of debt or starting a business or being effective in ministry, there are all these things that you have to consider that comes along with having two minds, having two perspectives, two life experiences working instead of one, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Spiritually, when you are single, not married, you have a goal to please God, right? That's I'm here. I need to please God with the life that I live. Then you get married. You still have to make sure that your life pleases God, but you have this other responsibility.
And you do it. It's just another avenue to please God.
It's another avenue to please God. So I have to make sure that I'm pleasing God by treating my spouse the way that he would want me to. Mm-hmm. And so now you guys come together, and if you're both doing your duty in the marriage, then you come together and you please God through your marriage.
Right.
So it's how I treat you, how you treat me, how we treat the child, right? And then how we treat the outside world. Mm-hmm. And all of that, people are watching.
Yeah.
Thank God for this ministry. I think it's safe to say that you are a pretty private person.
Yeah.
I'm a guarded person, but I'm a little less private. Mm-hmm. But I still am guarded. Like, and so with this ministry, it has kind of forced us to
be transparent
and kind of open ourselves up to things that we probably normally wouldn't have done.
Yeah. Some things I still kind of cringe at. I was thinking about that the other day. Still kind of off the grid when it comes to social media, but knowing that because we have this ministry, we have to keep it going. So I'm just like, if it wasn't for this, I would be probably a hermit.
Yeah.
Because it's just not my thing. Like once upon a time, of course, but the more I'm like reverting back to pre-social media days, and the older I get, the more I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, this ministry definitely has caused us to open up more. The blessing in that is that we're helping people. So
yeah, and it helps us to help our own marriage, because to get behind this microphone and to share the things that we share, like we can't look at each other. Man, you over there on the mic talking about all this, and you're
not living
it.
You're
not living it. Mm-hmm. So we get it. You don't have to say it, because we'll look at each other like,
or we'll convict ourselves. We'll say something good and be like, "Ooh, ouch."
Yeah. I need to write that.
I need to pay attention to what I'm speaking.
Yeah. So, thankfully, those times and those periods in time where I'm feeling weak spiritually, or my faith is starting to dwindle,
but being on the same page spiritually comes with praying together. Once you get in the habit of praying with each other, your spouse may utter something that they haven't even revealed to you yet, but that when they're in the spirit and in the presence of God, and then they pour out their heart and they mention something that you haven't even heard uttered yet, you'll be able to say, okay, that's what my wife or my husband has been dealing with, so we need to talk about that later,
or I need to be praying
for them in that area.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's a great way to become one spiritually. So you know what each other is praying for and believing God for, so that you can be on one accord in that area.
And worshiping together, studying together, just sharing, being intimate actually helps, with it. You have to understand that when you're growing into becoming one, you don't have to think about what you're losing. It's like, what can we gain? When we think about getting the job done quicker, we talked about earlier, with finances. Well, if one person makes $100,000 and another person makes $100,000, and I'm going to do what I want with 50,000 of that, and you do what you want with 50,000 of yours, and then we have that 100,000 that we're pulling together, you can get some things done. But if we say, hey, all 200,000 of this, not considering taxes, like we're going to put this money toward a common goal, doesn't mean that I have to check in with you before I spend money, but I do consider, how is me spending this money going to affect us? Yeah. You can get things done quicker. It's just that simple, you know. And so working out together, if you go with me when I work out, then there are going to be times when I don't feel like going. You can motivate me, like, hey, let's go.
Holding each other accountable.
Holding each other sexually. This person, they like pleasing me. I like being pleased. So I'm going to make sure that I'm pleasing them. That leaves little room for other things to be considered. I mean, I know you touched on not feeling like you're giving so much of yourself. But when you're joining forces with someone, it's easier to gain than it's all like the bird in the hand beats two in the bush. Mm-hmm. Does that fit right there?
I don't know. I don't think
I don't
it
know
does.
either. Well, anyways, my point is, don't have such a close fist where it's like you can't gain more things.
Yeah.
Be patient with the process. Mm-hmm. Put in the work. Mm-hmm. And don't look at what you're losing, but think about what you can gain.
Yeah. And don't beat yourself up if it takes longer than you expected. I mean, it is a process, as you said. So, and
this goes for the small things in life and the big things in life. Mm-hmm. So I know that you take care of majority of the cooking. Mm-hmm. I know that there are times when after you cook, you don't feel like cleaning the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So I know in those times where it's like, okay, I'm gonna clean the kitchen, help clean up, or I'm gonna take care of this task when I know that you're kind of tired on this end. That makes a difference. Mm-hmm. On the other side of things, it's like, okay, purchasing a house or a vehicle, mm-hmm. or new furniture. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to be considerate of your partner when you're doing those things. Hey, I want a man cave. I know you want a garden tub. Mm-hmm. When we're looking, I need to know that, okay, these are some things that I know you want. If this house over here has the man cave that I want, but it doesn't have your garden tub, I got to be willing to be like, okay, well, we're not going to go with this one. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to work some overtime so that we can go ahead and put that garden tub in. You dedicate yourself to being one, not just when it comes time to make those big decisions, but also on the small things.
Yeah.
One of the most frustrating thing I think for couples is, where do you want to eat? Right? Mm-hmm. So be considerate. If you know that your spouse has certain restaurants that they prefer, but you have yours, then if they don't know what they want, you can suggest one of those restaurants. Mm-hmm. Right? And a lot of times you'll get a more positive response because you're giving them options of things that they already like. Mm-hmm. And if they don't like those things, sometimes they can say, well, they'll know that, okay, maybe this not their favorite restaurant, but because they're suggesting it, they're doing it for me. Sometimes they be like, well, we ain't got to go there this time. We can go to, and then you say your spouses. So sometimes, and this was another message we put out there on social media, take care of them. Oh,
if to get what you want, give what they need.
Exactly. So, and not doing things with ulterior motive, but
the reasoning or the intent should always be, how can I improve my spouse's day by doing X, Y, and Z for them?
Exactly.
And the bonus is, we usually get what we want. You should get what you want in the process. That shouldn't be the goal.
Yeah.
But it should be the bonus.
And, I'll even say this. Even if you're doing it with that expectation that you're going to get what you want, take care of your partner's needs. Like, I don't care how you feel about it. Take care of their needs.
Yeah.
And if they not doing what they supposed to do, God going to see to it that you taking care of.
Yeah.
Now.
But he also is mindful of your heart. So make sure you're giving from a place of love.
So that's all I was gonna say. With expectations comes heartbreak and disappointment.
For real.
So, you definitely want to tame and limit that expectation. So it's like, I made their lunch, or I ran their bath water, I, washed their car. I should be able to go watch the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You're gonna get disappointed at times because they may not respond. And most of the time, they're not going to respond how you want them to respond.
Oh, yes.
But if you don't expect it, then it'll come from a place where you can appreciate it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, if I take care of your need, right? I know you need to use the bathroom first. Mm-hmm. If there's only one bathroom, right? And I get up and I start moving around, and I know that, you could do what you have to do in here with me, but you could get things done, and it'll help your day if you have free range to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. if I was like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and I mentioned I'm gonna let you go use the restroom first because I want something that I've already asked you for. If you don't respond by giving me that specific thing,
yeah,
but you do something else for me that any other time I could appreciate, I'm not gonna be able to appreciate what you did do because
you were expecting it to come a certain way.
Exactly. So be careful on that.
Yeah.
Make sure you're taking care of needs, but don't do it with the expectation of getting what you want, even though it kind of comes with the territory.
Or just keep it very general and high level. If I do this, I know that my spouse is going to appreciate it. That's a healthy expectation to have.
There you go. Yeah, now.
We can talk about expectations.
Yeah.
But have healthy expectations.
No doubt.
And don't set yourself up for failure.
Don't set yourself up for failure, right? Now, in saying all of that, there is room for individuality. I don't want people to think that two becoming one means that I don't have my own thoughts and opinions.
They already know that because we did a whole episode on that. So if you haven't listened to it, check it out. It's one of our earlier episodes.
Definitely check it out. There's a podcast I was listening to, and the lady was talking about how she had come to this epiphany that she wanted to retire early, and her husband had not yet reached that level of thinking.
Yeah.
She introduced him on for an episode, and she's talking, and so she's asking him to kind of describe, how he felt about this whole process. And so he kind of mentioned that he wanted to buy, I guess he got rid of his car that he had so that they can reach the goals, financial goals that they had set for themselves. And he was mentioning that at some point he wanted, to get another car. And I think that kind of took her for a loop. And she was like, oh, that's interesting, right? But she supported him because she was like, hey, you supported me when I came to you with this idea of retiring early and doing all these, things that we had never done with our finances. So the fact that you met me there,
the least I can do is
it kind of goes against what, my plan is. But hey, I'm going to make sure that we work that into the goal and, what I'm saying, the objective that we're trying to do.
You just said it. It wasn't a part of her plan. But it should never be her plan to begin with. Now they have to regroup and create their plan together.
No, exactly. But he
where that fits in.
Exactly. He pretty much co-signed her plan. And so it was like, okay, I'm on board with that. But he still has some things that, he desires. And so
you have a contract. You have to agree to the terms.
And then you go back amend it.
And there you go. Yeah. Add an amendment.
I think that sums it up. You have things that you'll come to an agreement on, but because you guys are not the same person, you're working together as one unit, but there are going to be times when one person starts to think differently, and you have to communicate that with your spouse. As a spouse, just because you're still 100% moving ahead, you don't want to leave your spouse behind because then you're not working as one unit.
Right.
Hey, sometimes we have to detour. So we're going to detour. We're going to take this detour together. Do we agree that we're still trying to get to this place? And if both people agree to that, then hey, all right, the way we get there may be different, but we still moving together as one.
Yes. I like that.
Love each other. Show each other grace, mercy, respect, trust. All of those things are important on this journey. Some days are more difficult than others. Some days are going to be more fun than others.
Hopefully a lot more fun, or you have more fun days than challenging days.
Don't allow yourself to be that spouse that is stubborn and not wanting to grow and be the person that you need to be for your spouse.
If you're not growing, you're dead. And we bury dead things.
And you don't want to be buried.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that with this topic in mind, it has allowed me to see areas in our marriage that I can grow more.
Really?
Really.
We'll have to take that offline.
Yeah, we definitely gonna do that. And I mean, I mentioned earlier, like even just with the movie, I knew I wanted to talk about teamwork, but then sitting there watching those movies, I was like, They
were good movies.
They were, I mean, they were good. I didn't feel I would have never watched them by myself.
Yeah.
But
I know.
Yeah, they was.
I'm the movie buff.
Sling Blade was one of them. So
you like that one?
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah,
it was cool. Just say I've seen it. Probably never watched again. There's no indictment on how good it was, but yeah.
You liked Allied too. That was the one I was referring that you were kind of more so into it than me.
Allied was cool.
Yeah. Check those 2 movies out if you haven't.
This Boy's Life. If you like Sling Blade, I think you'll like This Boy's Life.
Okay.
We're not paying to see it though.
No.
All right. So yeah, we on some other stuff. So thank you guys once again for sharing this time with us.
Yes, we appreciate you listening as always.
To our new listeners, our old listeners, know that we appreciate you. All of the comments, the reviews that you guys write. Continue to share. There are people that I meet just on a regular, random basis that marriage comes up. I tell them about the podcast. Make sure that if you have family, friends that are getting married, it's summertime, share the podcast with them. We love you guys, and we look forward to hearing more from you. I love you, baby.
I love you. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Ready to pray it out?
Let's get it.
All right.
Thank you, Lord, for sending us teammates that we can work together with, that we can accomplish the goals that you have set and placed in our hearts and minds. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that we had to speak today. Lord, we thank you for all those that are listening, Lord, those who have a heart to please you, to feel the need of their partners, and to make sure that we are edifying the kingdom that you have set here and above. We thank you. We praise you in your son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. See you next episode, guys.